This episode is brought to you by The Venture Project. Venture Project is a business incubator and co-working space in the fabulous Osh, Vegas, Wisconsin. However, we do remote consults. We also travel all over the country. So if you guys have a business idea or are interested in participating in the Venture Project community, please go to theventureprojectoshkosh.com where you can learn more about me and the Venture Project itself. Once again, this is theventureprojectoshkosh.com. All right, everybody, welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews podcast. I'm your host, AJ Armstrong. You can learn more about me at aaronjarmstrong.com or head on over to my Instagram at aaronarmstrong33. That's Aaron Armstrong 33. Today's guest was very exciting to discuss about business strategies for the young person, right? So we have Jeremy Parker. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's the co-founder and CEO of swag.com, a top e-commerce platform for purchasing promo materials that people actually want to keep. Now, Swag is innovating distribution and branding by making their own apparel and storing orders for customers. Swag.com did $365,000 in business year one, 1.12 year two, and $7 million in sales year three, with $10 million this year. They are 218 on Inc.com's top 500 and have grown 2,000% over 3 years. Through Swag, Jeremy has worked with Netflix, TechCrunch, Amazon, Google, and Spotify. Now, during times of quarantine where work remote is inevitable, companies are struggling to maintain a connected culture. Jeremy believes that Swag can solve this problem, sending one-of-a-kind gifts to employees has shown to keep people happy during these times of isolation and show appreciation to all of their hard work. So guys, without any further ado, Jeremy is a 40 under 40 candidate. He is also a fantastic entrepreneur, a great discussion. And I think you guys are going to have a lot of valuable takeaways from today's discussion because of some of his background in not only swag.com, but a lot of his other startups and exits. So I'm really excited for you guys to take a listen. So without any further ado, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
And how do you take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion?
Well, joining me from Miami, Florida today, we've got Jeremy Parker. Jeremy Parker is a serial entrepreneur, has had several different startup opportunities on 40 under 40 lists, as well as somebody that's, I think, had some cool partnerships. You know, what is this, Jesse Eisler, and some other things. So this is a pretty cool interview and opportunity to get a chance to dig into your story a little bit. So welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is really a treat to get a chance to discuss some different business principles. And I want to give people a little background on you, I think, before we dig into it. So I'd like to open it up to you, just kind of tell where your entrepreneur journey kind of started. Was it from your childhood, or when did you start getting into being a business kind of mindset?
That's a good question. So I was actually a documentary filmmaker in college. I used to be in high school really interested in branding and marketing. Kind of weird, but I used to be like really fascinated by commercials and how certain brands told stories. When I went to college, I went to Boston University, and I was looking at the course curriculum between film and marketing. It was pretty much the exact same thing, except for in film program, you would learn how to tell stories through video. And this is at the early onset of YouTube. It's like 2004, when YouTube was really getting a handle. And I was figuring, if I'm going to learn how to tell a story and be the best marketer I could be, I should probably learn how to make a video. When I was 18 years old, my documentary, a small film I made with my brother, ended up winning the Vail Film Festival. So a really large film festival.
Yeah.
And I remember I was on the top of the mountain. I was in Vail, Colorado with some buddies of mine. And we were at the celebrity brunch, quote unquote celebrity brunch. And half the room were these big celebrities everyone's heard of. And half the room were more struggling artists. And I did like an internal gut check. Number one, am I that good? And number two, do I love it? And both answers were no. So once I realized that I didn't think I was frankly that good, even though I just won this film festival and I didn't truly love it. It wasn't in my being. It wasn't in my passion. I felt like I should probably do something else. So I graduated college. I started my first business, had no business experience whatsoever. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't know what I was good at. I started a t-shirt company because I thought when I was 22 years old, start a t-shirt company, you'll learn all the different aspects of business. You'll learn how to manufacture, you'll learn how to build an e-commerce site, production, PR, marketing, all these different things. And I could try to gravitate towards what I'm good at or what I'm bad at, and I could figure it out. I ended up launching a high-end t-shirt company in 2007. Now, if you could go back to 2007, this was right around the time of the recession. Mm-hmm. So Bear Stearns and all these banks were going under. So all of these stores that we were selling to in 2007 went under. I was selling these $200 t-shirts, like really premium high-end t-shirts. And what happened is I came up with this marketing idea that's a little gimmicky if you think about it, but when I was 22, it seemed like a genius idea, where we tied the price of the shirts to the price of the Dow Jones. So for every 100 points the Dow dropped, we would give people a discount on their t-shirt price. And I wrote this to Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is obviously a multi-billionaire entrepreneur, but he had a blog, or he might still have a blog called Blog Maverick, which every week he would post things about being an entrepreneur and different things he's learned. And when I'm starting to be an entrepreneur, I really was following Mark Cuban's blog because I was trying to learn as much as I could. And I wrote him a note and I told him about my marketing idea. And within 15 minutes, he responded to my email and he said, "Do you mind if I post your story to my blog?" And he posted it, and it ended up getting picked up by Ad Age, a big marketing magazine, which ultimately got seen by one of the founders and CEO of MV Sport, a large promotional product company. I met with the CEO of MV Sport, and he got me introduced in this whole promotional product space. So going from a filmmaker to being the CEO of swag.com, it's kind of weird of how I got there, but it ultimately was like one opportunity led me to something, opened the door to something else. And I constantly kept just learning and meeting different people, and ultimately got me to where I am today.
Wow. Just jump in. It seems like that blog post that got Mark Cuban's attention. Tell me a little bit more about what you were talking about that seemed like a unique idea, because that seemed like it kind of was a catalyst to most of your story.
Yeah, it was. It was like the jumping off part. So I noticed that obviously I'm selling $200+ t-shirts. Every store we were selling to, their whole business was done, right? No one, just put yourself back in 2007, no one was buying premium high-end goods. It just wasn't happening. Everything, people were, am I going to lose all my money? That was the mentality. So the idea was, what if when people buy a $200 t-shirt, we could give them the price at that very moment of the Dow, right? The Dow Jones. And for every 100 points they dropped, we would give them a discount on their t-shirt price. So in their minds, if all their money is going away, they would get a very cheap t-shirt. They could get a $200 t-shirt for $10 theoretically as the economy. So it was gimmicky, it was kitschy, but it was like, to me, the first ever that I've heard of market-related pricing model, like really tying it to the market. And when I wrote to Mark Cuban, I said, this is my story. I'm a young entrepreneur. I want to survive this period of time. I just spent 7 months building up this business just for the economy to deteriorate. I'm trying to figure out and solve it. I'm trying to think outside the box. And Mark liked it because it's the true entrepreneurial spirit. Like when things are not meant to go right all the time, right? They never do. So you have to be very adaptable and be willing to zig and zag and figure out a new path to make it through. So he liked that, the mindset of the young entrepreneur.
So did you just find Mark Cuban's email somewhere, or how do you even get a hold of?
Yeah, Mark it was actually a contact form on the blog, and obviously I didn't think of anything of it. I sent the email, I wrote a story. Within 15 minutes, I get a response, and it was signed M. So I'm like, maybe it's kind of crazy, but I've heard, throughout the years, I think he's done this a lot. I've read a lot about it, that people send him emails all the time and he really responds, not to every email, but the emails that really fascinate him. So he rereads them, apparently, everything.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So then you get in contact with one of the founders of this MV Sport. Yep. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I met Elliot, we just hit it off. I was 23 years old. Elliot's running this really big company, hundreds plus employees, many hundreds of employees. And we just became kind of like throwing ideas, and he would ask me for insight and for ideas, and we would just kind of brainstorm. And at one point he said to me, "Jeremy, we have a lot of different other businesses. They own a company that does, licensed apparel for collegiate markets, like all these different kind of things. They do weatherproof garment company, and they have all these companies." And he said, "Jeremy, if you have an idea that you think could work for our brand, let me know." So I had this idea at the time when I was 24 at this point, and I came with the idea to, what if we could do licensed apparel, like design t-shirt contests at different universities? So you go to University of Maryland or Oregon State or Purdue University, and the students could reimagine the school's logo. So everyone could say, hey, here's a really cool graphic design for Purdue University. It would be posted on the website. All the students would vote on their favorite design. The winning design would get printed on a t-shirt and sell at the bookstore, at the school, the basketball stadium, the football stadium. The idea was to make collegiate apparel cooler. So we did
kind of like a fan style logo. Almost.
Exactly. A fan style logo, or you can have themes like, hey, we have a big event coming up, or I don't know, like anything. We did like an Oklahoma City t-shirt for their football, like the Beavers. And we had like everyone design Beaver t-shirts and like all these kind of cool ideas. And we ended up, he loved the idea. He thought it'd be really fun because it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, if you have a winning design, you know for a fact you have a built-in audience who's willing to pay for it. So then you can go to the bookstore and you can say, hey, once we actually put this winning design in there, we already have thousands of people who've already voted on it and said that they would buy it if it wins. So it's like building up this kind of momentum and network for consuming products. So we did that. He loved it. We ended up launching at many different schools. I mean, tons of schools. And we did that for 2 years. And I was traveling all around, going to different college campuses, launching these kind of contests and these programs. And after about 2 years, I ended up joining my brother at a startup that he started. And my brother had this very innovative idea. And I was like at 25 or so at the time. And he saw all these YouTube stars were getting millions of views, but were making no money. And that was kind of the impetus. We were watching American Idol one night, and we saw all the judges at American Idol drinking that out of a Coca-Cola cup. And clearly they're not drinking Coca-Cola. And the idea was, what if you get product placement into YouTube videos and make these YouTube stars millionaires? Now, every single person has TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Everyone's making a lot of money doing product placement. But put yourself 9 years ago, it was Wild West. No one was making any money. People were living in their parents' basement and getting millions and millions of views. So what we did is we created one of the first ever product placement agencies, if you will, for YouTube stars, and getting State Farm and Colgate, Verizon, all these different big brands into the YouTube stars video. And we did that for a little over a year. And then what we realized is, what if we did the same exact thing for major celebrities? So what if I got 50 Cent or all these big celebrities and we started to do it through their Twitter and Facebook feeds, right? They had millions of views. What if you did the same type of thing? They were able to do product placement. And so we partnered up with Jesse Itzler, and Jesse is a widely successful entrepreneur, created Marquis Jet, private jet company, sold to Warren Buffett, created Coke in the water, owns the Atlanta Hawks. And he knew a lot of different celebrities and worked out a deal with him where we took this whole YouTube world that we had kind of on lockdown that we knew very well. And with his major celebrities, we could really build something. Over the course of 8 months or so, we ended up selling that company to a publicly traded company. I was 26 or so at the time. So a lot of different things, like going from film to my own startup with promotional products to doing this celebrity, if you will, product placement company. But I was always super interested in the promotional product space. And that's what kind of got me. When I was 22 years old and I was working under MV Sport and doing this promotional product company for collegiate, I would go to the trade shows and I would realize every buyer at these trade shows were 40, 50, 60-year-old office managers, marketing teams. It was a much older buyer. And how they were purchasing swag was, in my mind, very manual. It was like presentation decks and catalogs and phone calls and back and forth emails. And it was very manual, if you will. And I realized that the buyer, fast forward until now, when we started the business in 2016, the buyer changed. And that was kind of the aha moment, that the buyer is no longer a 50-year-old office manager. It's, millennial. What do they want to do things that are different? They want to see things that are curated. They want to be able to purchase by themselves. They don't want to speak to anyone on the phone. They want to avoid lines at all costs. Like, how do you give them the right experience? So we started to really go deep into who today's buyer is and build them the right platform.
Wow, that's a hell of a story. I mean, what is it about you specifically that seems like you attract this kind of level of success? I mean, like, what is your outlook on how you approach businesses? Because, I mean, you exited to a publicly traded company. Now, that's a lot of entrepreneurs' dream. What is your mindset going into something? What is your mindset for when you're in the fight, when you're operating? What is that like to you?
Yeah. And I think it wasn't always this way. And I think I learned it over time. And my dad's an entrepreneur, so I think I've just been around him. My brother's an entrepreneur, so I've been lucky enough to be around them and to see how they interact with problems. But I think it's just the mentality of not being afraid of failure. I think a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of people in general get in their own way. They have to have the perfect idea, or everything has to be exactly right before they launch something. Or they have to know all the different nuance of like how the outcome is going to ultimately end up. And it's never the case. And I think I had this mindset that, by the way, it's completely freeing. When I launch something, when I build a business, when I start something, and even with swag, when I'm launching constantly, every single 3 weeks we're launching features, I never have the fear that it's not going to work out, because I know for a fact I know it's not going to work out. And I think unlocking that you launch something, it's not going to work perfect, but you're going to be open-minded and learn about what the right feature should be. And then you'll adapt and you'll change and you'll make it better. And then you'll launch it again and maybe a little bit better, but it's not perfect. And you'll keep doing that. I think just the mindset of, you have an initial idea, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the ultimate idea, but you're going to be willing to learn from your customers, from people around you, take what they have and keep adapting until you build the right platform. I think a lot of people just get in their own way.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, but there's something to that idea of facing failure or just being able to try things and being
open-minded to the result of what could happen, going into it with that mindset. Like people who listen to my show always know this is how I go with things. Like there's this spectrum, right? There's this, persevere and keep going with whatever you're going to do. But then there's this other like, well, let's try this out and get some feedback and figure out if we want to pivot and go a different direction or whatever. What's been your thoughts on that idea? Because I mean, sometimes you could be working on a bad idea, like where there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mm-hmm. But then there's this response and responding to the feedback. But then you respond to too much feedback and you might not break through the barrier that you needed to break through. What are your thoughts around that idea?
It's a good question. And it's hard to know. I think it's like you have to really internalize it. I'll tell you an issue that I had in the past. I did a business once when we launched this company called Vouch. It was a social networking app. And it was right after the success of us selling that business to the publicly traded company. And I was, feeling good. And I feel like, I could figure this out. And I started this company called Vouch with my brother and Jesse as well. And the idea was, what if you could vouch for your favorite things? So think of Oprah's favorite things or democratizing Oprah's favorite things for everybody. So everyone could say, here's my favorite movie, my favorite song, my favorite book. And you could follow your friends and you could follow people that you admire and see what they like. And then ultimately you're going to like their same stuff. Like you follow a certain celebrity, you're going to maybe won't be interested in seeing what book they read or what their favorite movie is, what their favorite song is, because you'll have that connection to them or your friends. Like I always had a friend who I always went to for songs or for new bands. I would just follow them on this platform. We launched this platform. We had hundreds of thousands of users, but it never took off to where it needed to be to really be successful, especially with the social media app. And what I learned for myself is we spent over a year building the platform before we launched it. Because in our minds, we kept thinking it needs to be perfect. It needs to be exactly right. It needs to be all these different things. The logo has to move this way and the color has to be this or that. And what I realized is when we launched the platform, all the stuff that we lost sleep over, all the things that we thought were so important that we could not, move behind, the customers could not give a shit. They didn't care. It was all this other stuff that I didn't even think of. Those were the things that they really gravitated towards. And when we realized that, we just wasted a full year. Like what happened? What if we just built something very quick, launched it, learned the right thing to build, and then we would ultimately been able to adapt and move quicker and build the right product. And so with Swag, I spent a full year learning what our customers wanted before I ever had anyone write a line of code. So all of 2016, it was me and my co-founder, Josh, knocking on doors, legitimately talking to customers, understanding what they wanted, what types of products they wanted, what the user experience is, why they're buying Swag, what's motivating them to buy Swag. Had really deep, in-depth conversations, and I would make sales from day one. I would just learn from customers, but at the same time, I was making sales. We did about 350,000 of sales in the first year. 2017 is when we launched the first version of the e-commerce site. So we spent the full year just knocking on doors and talking to customers and learning what they really wanted. Launching in 2017, we did about 1.1 million in 2017. 2018 did about 3 million. 2019, about 7 million. 2020 did over 15 million. This year, we're on track to do over 30 million in sales. And it all was because we just focused on customer. It's all about learning customer, and we didn't get in our own way. We didn't overthink it. We didn't think we knew all the answers. We were very completely open-minded to feedback and being convinced that we're wrong. And it was okay to be wrong. It was okay if we didn't have the right idea. But the whole goal of a business is to find the right idea. It doesn't have to be your idea. It has to be the right idea.
Tell me more about the idea of focusing on the customer. What exactly are you trying to know about this customer that makes you get to something like 30 million in sales that quickly?
Well, a couple of things. I'll tell you from the start, when we started Swag, I personally initially thought that we'd be going after marketing managers. That was my initial focus. That's what I thought, because I was thinking swag.com is the best place for companies to buy quality promotional products that people actually want to keep. So if you're going to a trade show and you want to buy tons of giveaways like branded mugs and notebooks and pens to give out to people, or you want to send swag to your best customers as a thank you, or you have onboarding new hires, you want to send everyone a swag box to say, thanks so much for being part of my team as a great welcome. If you want to send swag to leads to help close sales. So we built all these different tools at this point where you can easily go onto our site, see a curated offering of products, find what you're looking for, upload your design. Our system detects how many colors are in your logo, the nearest Pantone match, so we're printing Coca-Cola red and not Facebook and not Staples red, mocking it up, checking out in seconds. Literally in seconds, they could buy swag. And during the checkout flow, they could decide, do I want to send those 1,000 t-shirts to my office? Or do I want to hold those 1,000 t-shirts in a online swag closet, if you will, and distribute those t-shirts to 1,000 different people as needed? So imagine you have all these people's email addresses and you don't know where they live. We built tools where you could blast them a link. They could say which product they want, what their address is, what t-shirt size they are. It speaks to our system. We could distribute it. If you have all of your customers address on file, simply upload a CSV file. We'll calculate the shipping cost in real time. You pay for it, and we're shipping it globally. So we've made the process from production to also distribution effortless for companies. And we work at this point with over 7,000 companies, from Facebook, Google, Amazon, Netflix, Spotify to small startups. So you don't have to be a big global customer or company to use us. It could be you're buying 24 t-shirts, you're buying for a Mother's Day party, you're buying for a charity. It's the full gamut. So we just make it really easy for anyone to buy swag.
You've got this great idea, but then you need to get this in front of the right customer. So you talk about how most of your philosophy has been this customer focused idea.
Yep.
What does that mean? And how did you kind of apply that?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing was figuring out who is our core customer. I mean, in my mind, as I just named, there's like the sales team that could be a customer, the marketing team, the office manager, the HR team. There's all these different divisions within a company who buy swag. So who's our core customer? You can't be the best platform for everybody, at least not in the beginning. Ultimately, you can. But in the very beginning, you have to focus. And in the beginning, we were thinking initially that would be the marketing team, because we were thinking marketing managers have a huge budget. They're buying for trade shows. They're buying for customers. They're really ROI focused. So if you could convince that, sending a piece of swag to a customer engages that customer, gets them to spend more, they have a bigger budget. But then what we were realizing, we started going after off marketing teams and talking to different divisions within the company. We realized very quickly that yes, the marketing team is clearly a big buyer of swag. They're the biggest buyer. But for us as a small startup where no one knows us, we have no budget, we have no money. How are we going to break through the noise? Why would we want to go after the focus or the team within the company that really is being bombarded by everybody, right? Like we're nothing. Like why would they choose us over anybody in the very beginning? So we realized that maybe we should focus on the office manager. The office manager is not really focused on. They don't have the biggest budget. But really, the office manager is more powerful because they're like the Trojan horse within the company. The office manager, when they buy, 100 water bottles, they're buying it for their team. So when you give out 100 water bottles to all of their teammates, the marketing team, the sales team, are all getting water bottles. Who made these really high quality water bottles? Swag.com. It's basically a way for us to introduce ourselves to all the other divisions in kind of a backdoor way without having to appeal to them. So we went all in on the office manager. And how we did that is we knocked on doors. We made cold emails on LinkedIn. We showed up at WeWork offices and walking up and down the hallways, knocking on doors and seeing who we could speak with. We became friendly with these buyers and we learned from them. We came to them very honest. It wasn't like we have this platform built. It's like we came with, we want to build this right platform for you, but we don't know the right platform to build. We have some ideas and we would love to learn from you. What should the experience be? What you hate about your current buying experience? How can we help you? Is there ways to improve it? And we just listened. I think that was the first thing. We just listened. And while we were listening early on, we were also making some sales. So we did about 350,000 of sales just being like outbound cold outreach, right? But at the same time, it wasn't about the sales. That was just a way for us to learn who the suppliers are, how the process goes, how difficult it is, how we can modify and make it simpler. It was really just learning what is the right platform that we should be building, who's the right demo that we should be going after. And we spent that first year learning and also building so that a year later in 2017, when we launched the first version of the site, it wasn't great, but we knew it was the right focus. We knew we had the right brand. We knew we had the right aesthetic. We knew ultimately it was the right experience, but and then we just kind of did like launch and treat those customers as like product decision makers. They come to us. They felt like they were invested at this point. They were saying, hey, it'd be great if you had this feature. It'd be great if you could do that. It'd be great if you could buy a men's and a female t-shirt together. It'd be great if you could upload 3 different logos on the same side. It'd be great if you could change the color logo to white to black easily. Like they gave us the ideas and we just listened.
There's 2 things I think that are interesting. The first is off your last idea. This is another thing I think that becomes complex for people is there's a level of customer feedback, but then there's like customizing beyond your capabilities, right? So what is how do you normally kind of handle that issue? Like when you got a bunch of people like, hey, it would really be great if you could build me a rocket ship and send it to the moon. It's like, well, that's kind of out of scope for what we do. How do you stay within the box of that?
Yeah, I think we're just very honest. We say that's an amazing idea, what we do and how we kind of organize feedback. And I tell my whole product team, my operations team, my customer success team, they know the product even better than I do, right? They're the ones talking to the customers every day. Our customer success team is talking to the customers. They write down ideas that they get from customers on what things need to be improved. We have a running tally of features that have been given to us by customers and we mark it, we tick it. So if different customers ask the same question or 5 different customers say the same thing, we move it up on the list. So we prioritize that way. If there's one thing, it could be a great idea, but if only one customer is asking for it, I'm not going to spend time. It's expensive to spend time to build things. You can't be the right thing for everybody, but you could kind of chip away at the problems. And usually if it's the customer asking for something that many customers have asked for, it's probably something that's needed. So we just kind of organize all ideas and then move things depending on how many customers ask for it. And then sometimes we just say, you know what, we think this is actually going to be very beneficial. We can make it better. And when we override a customer or we come outside the box and we say, this is a cool idea, let's test it. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's so unique. So how we think of it is about like 90% of the features we build are directly coming from our customers. 10% is just stuff that we just make up and we think is cool.
As simple as that is, it's good that you have a process for that, because we run into entrepreneurs all the time that, well, this person asked for this. Should I pivot and change everything? It's like, well, there's a frequency that you're talking about, right? Like you're counting, okay, if this is a lot of people are asking for this, okay. I mean, as obvious as that is, but having that process down, and then like you're saying, you get a question or an idea out of the blue that's like, hey, that could fit with our strategy, right? Boom, now you promote it. I really like that. I like that idea. I think that's just a simple framework that makes customer feedback very helpful and useful. The second question I had kind of goes back, you were talking about you had like boots on the ground when you were trying to market this. Like you weren't above going door to door and knocking on it. And that's something here you are with this resume that's just stacked of all these different businesses in and out, these types of people you're networking with. And now you're going door to door, actually meeting with stakeholders. You're not thinking about what your return on your time and all this other crap is, but you're just worried about what's the most effective way to get in front of the customer. That is something that is lost. Do you do that to this day? Like, what is your mindset around where is my time best placed kind of idea?
Yeah, I think in the very beginning of any startup, especially when you have limited resources to do something, you're not only the founder, the CEO, the head of marketing, the head of sales, you're the head intern, the Uber driver. There's crazy stories. Me and my co-founder, Josh, the stuff that we had to do early days. I'll tell you a quick story, just the very beginning. So Facebook was actually our first customer ever. And we did this for a reason, because we wanted to get a blue chip company on our website. Because if you see, swag.com works with Facebook, clearly they could work with us. As opposed to starting from the bottom and working your way up, we took the opposite approach and said, let's start from the very top. It doesn't matter about the margin. It didn't matter about how much was the sale. It didn't matter about making a profit. It was about getting these people as customers, because we could learn from them, but we could also use their logo as kind of social proof. So our second customer was WeWork. And when WeWork asked us, they said, who else do you work with? We said Facebook. And they probably assumed we work with thousands of other customers, but really it was just Facebook. And we ended up winning this big WeWork summer camp t-shirt, big event, 5,000 people go to this camp and party for 3 days. And they were buying t-shirts. They're buying like 4,500 or so t-shirts to give out to everyone on the camp. Every single t-shirt had the swag.com inner logo printed on it, which is part of our marketing strategy to get it out there. We did not care about losing money. And frankly, we probably lost money. Like we probably made like 3% margin on the purchasing side. We undercut everybody because it was just about winning those deals. And we ended up spending 3 or 4 days rolling all the t-shirts, renting a U-Haul, driving it 6 hours to the campgrounds. We did everything from beginning to end, making sales. And you have to do those things. And I think it makes you, number one, a better leader. It makes you more empathetic when you're telling people to do things or when you're talking, because you know what they have to do because you did it. So I think that's a good thing. But also in entrepreneurship, you can never be, I'm better than that. That's not the mentality. The mentality is you always have to improve. You always have to do what's needed. You have to do the unscalable things. That's how you think of it. There's a time to be scalable, but in the very beginning of a business, you do the unscalable things. You do the things that are hard, that are difficult, because it's all about learning what the right process and platform should be.
I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's, it reminds me of a story. When we first started this building, I had a big showing that I needed to do, and I needed someone to help clean right away. So I called up my buddy who owns a janitorial company. This is like 7,500 square feet. So I was cleaning stuff, and I called the owner of the company. I said, can you get somebody in here tonight to do this? And he said, he's got 95 employees all over the state with this janitorial company. He's like, I'll come in and do it. And he's like, so him and I are sitting here cleaning before this event, and he's the owner of this company, and he's charging me the same rate that he pays his normal janitor staff. Mm-hmm. And it just goes to show, like, sometimes, you got to have those boots on the ground. You got to be hands on and into it. And to think you're above that, you miss the opportunity sometimes where, like, just hustling can work. Even some of my team, like, we had a spreadsheet, there was like 200 lines on it. And they're like, oh, we should send this out to a VA. I'm like, dude, by the time you call a VA, like, we could go through this whole thing right now. It's just like, there's a point where you can hustle and just do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a message that gets lost with, like, this idea of leverage and social media and scalability and I'm going to automate my life and 4-hour work week kind of bullshit.
I totally agree.
Well, one last thing I wanted to ask you, just because, like, on this kind of same idea, there's so much, I think, with your personality. Tell me about, like, the personal growth and development that you kind of go through, because you don't just fall into these circumstances. There's something about your demeanor, there's something about your habits, there's something about your beliefs. Tell me what those are for you.
I've been around, as I said before, my brother and my dad being around entrepreneurs. I remember It was a story. Must have been 8 years old. I was with my family in Colorado, and my dad he was trying to get an upgrade, and he was talking to the person behind the desk. And the person said, "Sorry, sir, there's no upgrades available." And my dad is a schmoozer, where he's talking to the guy, he's trying to, finagle something. And my dad looks to me. I remember this so vividly. As 8-year-old, I was a young kid. He looks at me, he goes, "Jeremy, you hear that person say no? He really means yes. He just doesn't know yet." And ultimately, my dad was able to convince them we got an upgrade. And I remember I took that because it's true with anything. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to be okay with being told no. You have to be okay with failure, and you have to be not just be like upset by it. You have to learn from it. There's many companies who have said no to us early on, even with Swag. And it took me 3 years, 4 years. And now we have 30 different buyers in the organization who are buying from us. And maybe they said no because it wasn't the right time. Maybe they said no because I didn't do a good job of messaging it or selling the benefits. Or maybe they said no because we didn't have the right platform for them at that point. Maybe we learned, maybe we got better. You always have to be okay with the no's and try to take it as an opportunity to get better. And I think just having that mentality, I'm assuming I learned it just being around entrepreneurs. I think it's probably just seeped into my being. But I think for other people, you definitely can learn it. It's a learnable trait. And I think it's just very much goes back to the mindset of being open-minded for feedback, to learn, not getting too down, just realizing there's always more future opportunities if you really keep going with it.
What kind of advice would you have for some of these different new startups? Obviously, you covered a lot of them, right? You have just being able to persist, be not afraid of failure, being able to learn, being able to accept no's and even navigate through no's and turning them into yeses. What's another piece that you'd say if someone's interested in doing this and they're serious about trying to be successful, what would you tell them to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, something I've learned and I wasn't always very good at, and I think I'm getting better at it, is being a manager, building a team. Team is really the most important thing. If you're trying to build something scalable, you can't micromanage. I know early on in my career, I used to micromanage, and it's hard not to. Like, you have your idea, you have your vision, somebody's being hired on the team. You want it to be exactly the way you want to do it. And that's not the way you want to lead. You want to set expectations and you want to make sure they're in the framework to succeed. Like, teach them how they should succeed and then allow them to do it. If you're hiring them, you're hiring them for a reason. And I think over the last 3 years, we got very good at finding who are the right people that we could onboard in the right way and make sure that they feel ownership. They feel prideful. They feel like they're open-minded to being taught. That's really it. It's just about finding the right people who are, what we say is coachable. Like, we don't look for people who've already done it in the past. We don't look for people who have stacked resumes. We look for people who we know could be very coachable and that will take pride in it and own their work and be very forthcoming and be honest and be collaborative. Looking for those type of team kind of players, I think, is the biggest life lesson. And don't rush hiring, because I've made that mistake also, hiring people for the resume, and it never works out. You really should focus on people that you could really see yourself working with for the long haul.
I think that's fantastic advice. Looking for those team players, looking for people that are willing to conform in a lot of ways to the vision that you're creating and trying to drive. In that same idea, I've noticed that there's kind of two types of people. There's very agreeable people that are yes men, and there's, or yes women or whatever. And then there's also these people that just, they have their own vision for how something goes. How do you navigate that when you're starting to build a team? How do you decide to have playful conflict, but also you want someone that's going to eventually conform to the vision that you have as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, we get that very clear in the onboarding process when we're interviewing. We want to understand from people, how do they handle conflict? How do they handle if they think something and somebody else disagrees? There's a time and a place to have very powerful opinions. And it's important. It's important to get your opinions, but it's also the way you do it. And it's also, if, let's say you feel very strongly and you've laid out your case, and for whatever reason, it's not the decision that is ultimately made, you have to be a team player and have that mindset. Okay, my idea wasn't work, but now I'm going to do whatever I can to support the idea that ultimately had. Like, that's the most important thing. You can't have people who get upset if their idea is not used, because they're always going to be upset then. Right? Like, there's never a time where my idea is always the idea that wins. Often my idea is the idea that gets shot down, and that's okay. It's being open-minded to say, you know what? There is a better idea out there. And we have to stop thinking about it's my idea or it's my division's, idea, or it's the operations versus this. We're all part of the same team. The main goal of the team is to build the best product. So whatever we have to do, let's all get on the same page. Let's overly communicate. Let's be there to support. Let's make sure we're going in the right direction. And if it's not my idea that's the one that's chosen, let's be the best cheerleader and the best advocate and try to help as much as possible to make sure the idea succeeds.
Yeah, that's huge. Do you have any recommended books or podcasts or resources that you like to consume to kind of help with your own personal and professional development?
I'm not a huge podcast listener. I personally just, when I have free time, I'm just listening to music and kind of detached from work, if you will. Like when I'm in the work zone, I'm in it. When I'm out of it, I try to be like so out of it. So try to get, it's so hard to be an entrepreneur because it's a constant thing. It's not like a 9 to 5 you're thinking about on Saturdays and Sundays and you can't, you lose sleep over and you wake up early and it's everything. And so if I'm able to, disconnect at any moment, I try to do that.
That's good. I think and I'm struggling with that a lot all the time because it just blurs. There's no like weekends. I mean, we're doing this event with the chamber and they're just like, yeah, that's a Saturday morning. And I'm like, oh, it just doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's Saturday, but normal people don't care about Saturdays, but yeah, I think that's great advice to recognize is having that separation and that barrier. So Jeremy, where can people get a hold of you? Where can, they follow along, support what you've got going on? What's a good resource to send them to?
Yeah, so obviously come check us out at swag.com, swag.com, and we'd love to help you out if you're ever looking for promotional products or to distribute to different customers or leads. If you want to reach out to me, you can send me an email at jeremy@swag.com or reach out on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Really appreciate it, brother. Hopefully when I make it down to Miami, I'll check out your beach house.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot. You guys are listening to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. Winners, people crushing it in life. Wallets, money and personal finance, real estate, small business, and worldviews, those business values that drive us there. So thanks a lot, everybody. Be somebody.